The Bible does not paint a picture-perfect view of God for anyone expecting him to be entirely sympathetic to the condition of human life. If the goal was to win over the hearts of people to side with the writings of Scripture, as though making a political case for God's track record of service and commitment to resolving human affairs, there would be a slew of accounts and details to omit. From humanity's fall in the Garden of Eden to Israel's 400 years of bondage in Egypt, God has unequivocally and unmistakably overseen the hardship of those abiding underneath his governance and oversight. He furthermore implements supposed remedies that turn out to induce other forms of suffering that his all-powerful nature can't seem to sufficiently rectify. The trajectory of the human race as a whole from the time of the fall becomes increasingly harsh and abrasive even under the scope of divine influence, as sinfulness tears at the moral conscience and social fabric of human life. And what God appears to be is an onlooker, intervening periodically to orchestrate or redirect outcomes that nonetheless leave the underlying conflicts unresolved. It would appear that the expectation of God for compliance from mortal beings does not actually fall into the realm of reasonableness, as it renders those subject to both failure and injustice bound to his demands for perfect obedience, while fundamentally broken in a fallen state of condition. And in really every case, there is no such spotless obedience actually realized by any human person. Moreover, every instance of disobedience or departure from sovereign intent is met by some form of judgment exacted or consequence incurred. God's actions in this immediate view come across as sadistic, insensitive, passive-aggressive, and unhinged, forcing upon people, places, and things a will that they cannot fulfill and expectations that they can never live up to. The odds are almost never in the favor of humanity where satisfying the purposes of divinity are concerned. And yet, hanging over the heads of every human life is the lawgiver and his law that crushes more lives than it comforts. This leads many to believe that God is indeed heavy-handed and unbearable. He often speaks of himself as being merciful, forgiving, loving, and caring, but frequently acts in a manner that is callous, condemning, oppressive, and unaccommodating. For some, there's simply no justification for this, and no acceptable rebuttal for what Scripture presents as God's vengeance against the very people he supposedly intends to redeem. There is really only one way that this picture is balanced out with any degree of sanity in what comes across as an exceedingly murky, messy, and meritless situation. Because while we look at these developments from a human point of view and assess them with the natural logic that screams for scrutiny, we must consider that what is also in focus here is a divine point of view with an outlook that supersedes normative rationale. There's an element of mystery to God that conceals the nature of his presence, the fullness of his counsel, and the totality of his purposes by reason of his intent to progressively reveal himself. We are talking about God, an immaterial entity, an incandescent being, a speaking spirit, a heavenly influence, a spiritual essence, a divine person, and a glorified sovereign. This is not some common figure or personality assessed by casual experience or personal familiarity, which many concluding with them themselves to be the case become vehicles of controversy, totally misrepresenting the personhood of God and completely fabricating their presentation of being witnesses of him. Not only is Scripture a progressive revealing of God, but God himself is a progressive revelation. Everything about God is not captured in the acts and speeches recorded in the Bible, nor are the various operations of God a perpetual constant with no change of direction or shift in expectation. And it's this contrast of developments in biblical scripture that catches many, many people off guard, who fail to perceive the manner in which God is progressively revealing himself. And the one thing that is consistently highlighted across time as being essential for humanity in observance of God's revealing is faith in him. The point here is that there is no matter whatsoever that is left unaccounted for in the complete plan of God for humanity and the world. He is not gracelessly, selfishly, or maniacally patronizing humanity with half-decent acts of inspiration and revelation, coupled with endless conditions of struggle and deprivation. He has, however, at his discretion, measured out the works of his creation, providing just enough to be seen that at the same time demands belief, which without there is no way to know who God truly is, and no chance of escaping the ends of hopelessness in a fallen world on account of the faithless wrestle against its creator.